Ian Bartoszek was on a regularly scheduled tracking mission over the winter, equipped with these transmitters to find female Burmese pythons and their eggs deep into the wilderness.
In the heart of Florida's untamed swamps, an astonishing enigma emerged. Enormous pythons, usually the top predators, are vanishing without a trace. Picture following a serpent longer than 13 feet, only to discover not the snake itself, but its radio transmitter still pulsing from deep inside another creature. What kind of animal could engulf these massive invaders entirely and survive to reveal the story? This is no isolated incident, but a consistent pattern that has left scientists stunned and forced them to question everything they understood about the Everglades food chain. Could one native species be reversing the roles against this ecological threat? For years, scientists tracked Burmese pythons across Florida's wetlands to learn more about their movements and behaviors. These snakes grow huge, with some stretching beyond 13 feet and weighing over 50 pounds. At first, when radio signals from tagged pythons stopped, it seemed routine. Yet a disturbing trend appeared. Whole pythons began disappearing completely. The transmitters placed inside these snakes kept transmitting, but the pythons themselves could not be located. When the team finally arrived at the exact spots indicated by the still active signals, they encountered something bewildering. Instead of the monitored python resting or concealed nearby, the snake had vanished with no obvious signs of a fight. At first, the puzzle intensified. How could a creature that rules this habitat suddenly disappear? Even more confusing, the transmitters were now transmitting from within another animal. This finding shocked the group. An apex predator such as the Burmese python does not simply disappear. Discovering a transmitter inside an unidentified animal pointed to something extraordinary. Whatever had eaten the python had done it swiftly and thoroughly. The snake's lengthy body appeared to have been swallowed intact, leaving no ripped flesh or remnants. This was no typical predation. It was something remarkable and unknown. The radio tracking was not a single event. Similar signals stopped in the same unusual manner months apart, showing this was not a one-off occurrence. Several pythons vanished in exactly the same way, sparking urgent questions about what force in the swamps was systematically pursuing these giant invaders. The effects spread through the scientific community. What or who was this hidden predator? The scenario felt unreal. How could an animal able to swallow such large snakes remain unnoticed in a thoroughly examined environment? And why had no one seen this predator at work until now? The puzzle required answers not only for scientific interest, but because the future of Florida's delicate ecosystem could hinge on grasping this surprising challenge to the invasive pythons. The team quickly set up cameras and collected further proof, aiming to film the offender in the moment. The unusual trend demanded close observation and patience. Could recording this predator on video rewrite the narrative that had appeared so one-sided for decades? The Everglades had suffered under these invasive snakes for years. At last, nature seemed to be striking back. Though the pythons had caused chaos for a long time, their sudden and unexplained vanishing suggested a fresh chapter. The clues existed, but the complete picture stayed just beyond reach. The researchers understood the risks were serious, and whatever they uncovered might transform the known food chain in Florida's swamps. The wait continued. As the push to solve this puzzle intensified, so did the realization that this predator broke all expectations. The idea of a creature powerful enough to devour apex predators whole felt almost impossible. Yet the evidence could not be ignored, and soon the startling identity of this mystery hunter would become clear, flipping assumptions on their head. The vanished giants had not disappeared by chance. The proof pointed to a deliberate hunter, one that had adjusted or evolved to overcome what was once untouchable. The question lingered. What could that be? This riddle was about to be answered, and it would expose a truth hard to accept in any wild place. Yet before explaining how these invaders multiplied so fast, another matter needed focus. Something in these wetlands had started turning the hunters into the hunted, quietly altering the balance of power and revealing a flaw no one knew these giants possessed. Moving from this confusing disappearance brings us to how these huge invaders reached Florida and why they once looked unbeatable. Burmese pythons do not belong in Florida. These massive snakes come from thousands of miles away in the humid jungles of Southeast Asia, flourishing in places like Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. By the 1980s and 1990s, the exotic pet trade carried thousands of them into the United States. Their bold looks and impressive size made them sought after as exciting but risky pets. Few expected how rapidly these young snakes outgrew captivity and became colossal wild hunters. Burmese pythons can grow up to 20 feet long and weigh over 200 pounds. Their strong muscles let them squeeze and swallow prey whole, including targets as big as adult deer or American alligators. What began as exotic pets turned into powerful beasts with a fierce appetite. The release and escape of these pythons into the Everglades occurred for several reasons. Some careless owners let them go because they could not handle their fast growth and demanding care. Then, in 1992, Hurricane Andrew wrecked local breeding facilities, sending many captive pythons into the wild. From that point, the invasion surged without restraint. Once settled, Burmese pythons faced almost no natural enemies in Florida. The local wildlife had never developed alongside snakes of this scale and strength. They became ideal hunters in an ecosystem packed with plentiful prey that did not recognize their danger. Over the decades, the pythons devastated native populations, eating heavily on raccoons, rabbits, bobcats, birds, and even deer. The numbers paint a grim picture. Some areas saw raccoon populations drop more than 99% since 1997. Opossums, marsh rabbits, and foxes suffered equally severe declines. The pythons broadened their feeding habits, causing ecosystem disruptions that wiped out native species and upset natural predator-prey links. From 2008 to 2010, wildlife researchers recorded over 10,000 python sightings, but experts believe far more pythons live in the swamp. As one ecologist estimates, the snake population surpasses 200,000, trapped in thick plant cover. Humans struggle to find these creatures because of their skill at hiding and blending into the surroundings, leaving their true numbers unknown. The python invasion transformed North America's most guarded natural area into an environmental crisis that creates more issues than mere ecological upset. The snakes claimed dominance because they had no natural controls to limit their numbers. The area faced an immediate threat that grew more severe through their non-stop destructive behavior over many years. The Everglades' natural balance showed signs of lasting harm from these endless risks that endangered its survival. The invaders ruled territory where they could catch prey easily without facing real danger. As the unexpected shifts began producing evidence that native species once nearing extinction were returning to their old ranges. For years, their spread looked unstoppable, almost automatic in its exactness. Every marsh, canal, and mangrove provided fresh ground to claim. Yet beneath this quiet takeover, faint resistance was building, an unseen counterforce rising inside the very ecosystem they had overtaken. Grasping how these pythons secured their strong position in Florida prepares the ground for the shocking find of what, or who, is now contesting their rule. When the pythons started vanishing mysteriously, researchers first examined the biggest usual suspects in the Everglades. American alligators stand as one of the most feared hunters, able to crush and roll prey to death. But bite marks on the remains of one python did not match alligator attacks. The injury differed, missing the crushing signs alligators typically leave. The Florida panther, another leading carnivore, also looked like a possible culprit. These rare cats possess the power and claws to kill a python if the chance came. But the team found no claw marks or signs of mammal predation on the missing snakes. It became obvious the pythons had not been ripped apart and carried away as expected from big cats. Likewise, other large predators like bears and birds were eliminated. There were no feather prints or tooth marks matching these animals. The pythons were not merely hurt, they were eaten whole with no visible harm. This made the puzzle even harder. What predator could swallow an entire snake this size undamaged? This ruled out many usual explanations and pushed the team to consider less obvious options. If the typical apex predators were not involved, then perhaps something subtler was happening. Yet what native creature could have both the size and method to eat massive pythons whole without leaving a trace? For weeks, the team remained puzzled. The evidence steered away from standard predators and toward a completely new view of the Everglades food web. The snake had not simply been torn apart and eaten, it was gone entirely, swallowed like a strand of spaghetti, far too whole for ordinary predation. Scientists knew they needed to film something to verify their idea. The breakthrough required patience, correct camera placement, and openness to rethink accepted knowledge. The swamp, it turned out, held a surprising answer. In time, the video revealed a predator no one expected. It was itself a snake. a venomous native species able to kill and swallow large pythons. This finding shattered years of beliefs and made scientists re-examine how survival works in this intricate ecosystem. Revealing the identity of this surprising hunter opened the path to a fuller grasp of how nature might be resisting one of its biggest threats. Each rejected idea narrowed the possibilities, tightening the puzzle with every mismatch. What stayed was not just unlikely, but unheard of. A predator working without sound or fight, leaving only silence where dominance once ruled these wetlands. As the pieces connected, a fresh image formed of Florida's swamps and the intense, sometimes unseen battle inside them. After weeks of puzzling over the vanished pythons and ruling out all usual suspects, the researchers finally recorded footage that altered everything. The predator at work was not a giant mammal or a heavy reptile like the alligator. It was a snake, a native venomous pit viper known as the Florida cottonmouth. This finding amazed scientists because it had always been thought that no creature in those swamps could face and eat a Burmese python whole. The Florida cottonmouth, also called the water moccasin, is a strong, semi-aquatic snake famous for its bold defensive display. When threatened, it opens its mouth wide, showing bright white tissue inside as a warning to stay away. Yet beyond this dramatic show, few realized it had quietly developed a predatory skill that could reshape the balance of power in the Everglades. But what the cameras showed was a cottonmouth carefully stalking juvenile Burmese pythons and swallowing whole snakes nearly its own length. One of the most striking moments captured displayed the cottonmouth eating a python tail first, steadily working the entire serpent down its throat with steady effort. This was no random meeting but a precise, repeated action, showing that cottonmouths had adjusted to add these invaders to their diet. Researchers understood this was not a fluke or single case. Several transmitters placed in juvenile pythons were later discovered still pulsing inside the stomachs of cottonmouths. This proof made it clear that the cottonmouth was not merely eating pythons by chance, it was deliberately hunting them. And this insight compelled scientists to reimagine Florida's food web and predator-prey interactions in the Everglades completely. The size comparison was startling. The pythons they swallowed measured between 2 and 3.5 feet, matching the actual cottonmouths in those same dimensions. The snake-eats-snake situation overturned earlier ideas about swamp dominance. The Burmese python lost its apex predator position once this native animal proved a superior hunting rival. The research proved that ecological systems hold a powerful ability to recover from disruptions. The python threat prompted native species like the cottonmouth to form new adaptive behaviors as their natural reply. The swamp built its hidden defense system, operating like a concealed army battling the python invasion. Yet the scientists witnessed cottonmouths eating pythons with expert skill, creating a sense of joy and optimism. The ecosystem displayed an ongoing natural process that showed how recovery would follow destruction. The new predator-prey link created a fresh challenge because it required scientists to examine which changes would last. The cottonmouth acts as a leader in this unexpected conflict because it reveals that the Everglades ecosystem is both dynamic and complex. The native wildlife here demonstrates that native species can triumph in their fight against invasive species, even in regions overtaken by them. Yet what looked like brute force was far from random. Beneath each successful hunt lay a series of calculated advantages: stealth, precision, and timing, working together in ways that let this native predator challenge an invader once considered unreachable. But the story of how cottonmouths achieve these feats naturally leads to exploring their unique adaptations. The Florida cottonmouth's capacity to hunt and eat pythons is not simply courage or chance. It rests on an impressive collection of physical and biological adaptations. Adults usually reach between 2 and 4 feet long, with some rare ones exceeding 6 feet. They are heavy-bodied, muscular snakes perfectly suited for a semi-aquatic life, thriving in the swamps, marshes, and waterways of the southeast. One of the cottonmouth's strongest tools is its venom, which is hemotoxic. This means it attacks tissue and blood cells from within, causing widespread damage that can swiftly immobilize prey. In humans, untreated bites carry about a 17% mortality rate, but for smaller animals, the venom is almost always fatal. This impact proves especially useful against prey that can resist, like juvenile pythons. Cottonmouths use a special hunting method. They strike fast and then let go of their prey, waiting calmly for the venom to take effect, while staying at a safe distance. This strike-and-release approach reduces risk from struggling prey. When facing pythons, especially young ones without full strength, this method proves deadly and efficient. Another vital adaptation is the cottonmouth's infrared sensing ability. As pit vipers, they have specialized heat-sensing organs between their eyes and nostrils. These pits detect infrared radiation or body heat, letting the snake sense warm-blooded animals even in total darkness. And this skill makes hunting at night in murky swamp waters much simpler. The cottonmouth's power to detect the faint heat signature of reptiles like pythons, which stay slightly warmer than their surroundings, provides a key advantage. Their thermal vision functions almost like a bright signal marking their prey's location, even when hidden under plants or underwater. Paired with their muscular frame, this makes cottonmouths quiet and lethal hunters. Cottonmouths are also natural snake eaters, known scientifically as Ophiophagus. They regularly consume at least 27 different species of snakes, including their own kind. This is not new behavior caused by the python invasion. It belongs to their long-established ecological role. Adding Burmese pythons is merely a recent expansion of their diet. When hunting fish or frogs, how cottonmouths hold prey in their jaws while the venom works. But against pythons, especially juveniles, the venom subdues and kills the prey after a quick strike and release. Young pythons, despite their size, lack the strong muscular power adults develop and remain open to this venomous ambush. By using this vulnerable stage in juvenile pythons, cottonmouths show a deadly efficiency that surprised researchers. Their predation on invasive snakes is not just survival, it is a type of evolutionary response. Watching this natural conflict shows how native predators are shaping the Everglades' future, one bite at a time. This impressive collection of adaptations creates a picture of a powerful hunter quietly shifting the balance in a long and tough ecological fight. While the cottonmouth may appear as an ordinary snake to casual observers, its position as a python predator uncovers a sophisticated hunter perfectly matched to this environment's challenges. These traits did more than guarantee survival. They opened a gap. In the narrow spaces between growth stages and changing habitats, this native hunter found its chance, using weaknesses at the perfect moment and slowly rewriting who controls power across these contested wetlands. The cottonmouth's deadly arsenal and hunting method prepare the ground for a deeper look at how evolution and adaptation are happening now, reshaping Florida's ecosystems in surprising ways. Nature frequently astonishes us with its power to adapt, and the events in Florida's Everglades offer a clear example. Cottonmouths have not merely found pythons as food. They seem to be deliberately refining their hunting methods to take advantage of this invasive species. Some researchers now ask whether these venomous snakes have learned to identify juvenile pythons as especially simple and nourishing prey. This idea suggests evolution occurring right in front of us. 3 separate cases recorded within one study area over just a few months point to a pattern rather than coincidence. The repetition suggests deliberate targeting instead of random meetings. If cottonmouths are indeed choosing juvenile pythons on purpose, it raises questions about how fast native predators can change behaviors in reply to new dangers and chances. This type of quick adaptation could reshape predator-prey interactions throughout the Everglades. Such behavioral flexibility is not unknown in nature, but it is remarkable to observe with an invasive species as strong as the Burmese python. Cottonmouths have always been snake eaters, but including an invasive giant in their menu shows a real-time evolutionary arms race. In this contest, the cottonmouth's venom, heat-sensing abilities, and stealth give them an advantage, especially against younger pythons that have not yet perfected their own defenses. The effects reach beyond these 2 species. If native predators can adapt quickly, it signals a possible move toward ecosystem recovery, where natural processes start fixing imbalances caused by human actions. Still, the fast reproduction and growth rate of pythons mean this conflict is nowhere near finished. Adaptation may bring hope, but it is not an instant or certain fix. The developing link between these creatures shows how hard it is to manage invasive species that demand targeted control methods. Conservation work must include native predator studies that examine their natural responses based on their natural behavior patterns. The behavior of cottonmouths proves that ecosystems undergo constant change because their parts experience regular adjustments that create unexpected shifts. The situation raises new questions needing answers. Do cottonmouths hunt pythons as their primary prey, or only eat them when the chance appears? The snakes have formed a new feeding method they use to consume their present food supply. The research results show positive outcomes, but the findings require more study. Scientists perform ecological observation to uncover newly formed ecological relationships that need time to grow. The idea of evolution that actively changes the Everglades gives people a mixed feeling of ecological progress that needs urgent focus. The natural world employs this method to regain control that has endured many years of ecological harm. The story of cottonmouths facing their former rulers shows how nature reclaims its strength through resolve. The cottonmouth sets a new fighting position through its current role, which reveals one part of their continuing struggle. The Florida ecosystem has gathered a group of native species that are beginning their fight against invasive species. Each repeated meeting suggested more than instinct alone. Patterns started to form, subtle but steady, and indicating native hunters were adjusting faster than expected, closing gaps, improving tactics, and gradually turning scattered resistance into something far more organized within these wetlands. This rising resistance among native predators brings us to a wider view of the allies rising against the python invasion. The cottonmouth's surprising success forms part of a larger, multi-sided response by Florida's native wildlife against the python invasion. Massive American alligators, the classic image of swamp strength, are reclaiming their role as top predators by killing several tracked pythons in recent studies. In one notable instance, an alligator 9 feet long took down a large python, showing that these ancient hunters stay powerful opponents. But alligators are not acting alone. Bobcats, once believed to avoid python nests, and have started changing tactics. In 2021, wildlife cameras recorded a bobcat facing a python nest, successfully raiding and taking eggs, a first-ever documented event. This daring action suggests cats are learning to counter the snake's reproductive edge and defend their territories from the invasive threat. In addition, predators of different sizes add to this natural resistance. Birds of prey such as owls and hawks have been seen grabbing young pythons from open spots. Their keen eyesight and flight create an ongoing danger to juvenile snakes trying to settle in exposed areas. Even larger mammals like black bears and Florida panthers join the effort, preying on pythons when chances appear. This expanding force of native species sends a clear signal. The python invasion will not continue unchecked. Each predator adds a level of pressure, disturbing python numbers step by step. Researchers have also discovered indirect proof of this fight, such as partly eaten pythons near bobcat tracks and pieces of chewed tracking devices. These clues offer a view into the daily battle happening in the swamps, where many species struggle for balance. Yet despite these hopeful signs, the overall war stays fierce and far from decided. Pythons breed quickly and remain experts at hiding, often escaping detection even by skilled trackers. Their skill at disappearing into thick vegetation makes controlling their numbers a constant test for both animals and humans. The combined work of native predators buying time is priceless, but it highlights a larger truth. The Everglades ecosystem relies on many forms of resistance to endure the python threat. These natural fighters, though steady, cannot stop the invasion alone. This layered defense indicates that while adaptation is taking place, it may need support and strengthening to protect the future of Florida's wild areas. The resilience shown is impressive, but how far it can reach is still unknown. Together, these scattered clashes revealed a quiet alliance forming across land and water. Different hunters, different approaches, yet all applying pressure in overlapping ways, creating friction that slowly wore down the invaders' unchecked spread throughout the Everglades. The continuing battle among these species emphasizes the complex and tightly linked web of life striving to reclaim its home. Despite the increasing resistance from native species like cottonmouths, alligators, and bobcats, and the fight against invasive Burmese pythons in Florida's Everglades is nowhere near finished. These snakes breed rapidly, laying between 12 and 36 eggs per clutch, and reach maturity in a few years. Their high reproduction rate means that even with natural predation and human removal work, the python population stays worryingly strong and hard to manage. The Everglades is a vast and difficult terrain, packed with dense vegetation and remote zones where pythons can hide comfortably. Researchers and hunters often come within feet of these snakes without noticing them. This expert concealment adds another level of difficulty to handling the invasion, as many snakes stay unseen and unmonitored despite intense efforts. Human hunters have taken out more than 5,000 Burmese pythons since removal programs started, And events like the 2024 Python Challenge removed nearly 200 in one weekend. While these figures look strong, wildlife ecologists stress that such actions barely touch the surface. The invasive python population still greatly outnumbers these removals, weakening hopes for fast ecosystem recovery. The numbers are sobering. Female pythons can live for decades, reproducing steadily and filling new areas. Their toughness and adaptability make them masters of survival in the Everglades, and without steady pressure, their numbers could rebound or even increase despite losses. What stands out most is that native predators are not waiting for human help to react. Cottonmouths began hunting pythons independently. Bobcats started raiding python nests without guidance. Alligators keep defending and reclaiming territory as they always have. While nature is adjusting in real time, forming a natural defense line that did not exist before. The speed of these adaptations now forms the central question needing evaluation. The python invasion has turned into a lasting environmental crisis that affects ecosystems through its slow recovery process. The delicate balance that exists now needs continued support, because any pause in management will cause biodiversity losses and native species extinction. Researchers warn that judging nature's ability to recover depends on the methods people plan to use for restoration. The Everglades faces possible damage because humans must keep their efforts to support native predators while managing invasive species. Protecting the swamps demands both active combat in the swamp and steady commitment to monitoring and required actions. And scientists seek better ways to help native species like the cottonmouth carry out their natural role as python hunters. The process might involve three main steps: habitat protection, reducing human interference, and advancing research on predator-prey relationships. The Everglades' future needs people and wildlife to cooperate through their partnership. The fight against the Burmese python invasion has grown into a battle that will last because its final results remain uncertain. The Everglades system does not act as a passive place because it builds a strong defense against outside forces. Nature needs to adapt while people must help its survival to decide whether this resistance can create balance. What comes next will rely on persistence from both wildlife and those working to back it. Every small win, and each disrupted nest or hunted juvenile, may shift the balance bit by bit, deciding whether this delicate pushback can grow into lasting control. Florida's battle against invasive pythons is a tale of mystery, resilience, and unexpected allies like the cottonmouth. Nature is pushing back in surprising ways, but this continuing struggle needs our focus and support. If you found this fascinating, please like and subscribe to stay updated on wildlife stories and the hidden forces shaping our world.